Grace, mercy, and peace to you from the Holy Trinity. Amen.
Also with you.
I really, really love the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which is the version that our readings come from. And I really, really love using gender-expansive language when talking about groups of people. This is the one thing that Texas does right, besides barbecue. There, they don't say the phrase that I grew up with, that is dead batteries. They don't have the phrase that I grew up saying, you guys. It's y'all. And that's for some people, but when you want to talk to a large group of people, it's all y'all. Anyway, Texas has used its vernacular to be a place of inclusion for people who aren't guys, and for people who don't identify with either end of the gender spectrum, just by removing masculinity from the third person plural in conversation. The NRSV tries to do this as well, though it isn't perfect. But today, Jesus says, you will be catching people, which sounds creepy. Now, I don't know that we only need to say fishers of men like the King James Version or our song we just sang says, but maybe they could have said, you will fish for people, which sounds much nicer than catching them. Or maybe it's just that I've watched too much Law & Order SVU, and that sounds creepy because of that. And so, in spite of what I consider to be a poor choice of words, I thought a lot about being a people catcher this week. And specifically, I thought a lot about Simon this week. He had no luck in getting the fish, and then Jesus came along and gave him more fish than he could ever handle. And I think that sometimes we might get caught up in the story of the big fish and ooh and ah at the miracles of our Lord and how he provides enough and some to share in all circumstances, even in fishing. And I think that we get distracted by that and the shiny scaled miracle in this story and not see another miracle that's hidden underneath. I think that the underdog miracle here is that Simon leaves all of this behind. He realizes that it's not about the fish. It's not about how his nets had enough to support him financially for a long time. He sees this miracle, and then a miracle happens. He leaves his life behind. He puts the nets down because he sees that following Jesus is going to be worth so much more than a giant pile of trout. And I think that that is a miracle. Because following Jesus is not easy work. He makes a deliberate choice to leave the fish and the boats and follow Jesus because he sees that there's more to life than just his livelihood. That kind of stings, if I'm honest with you, and I imagine it might sting a little bit for you too, to learn that what we do isn't the most important thing about us. I mean, it's woven into our social niceties. When we first meet people, we're conditioned to say, so what do you do? As one of the first questions that we have after introducing ourselves to another person. We equate their work with their life, and we have an unspoken assumption that if you're not working, then you're not living well. We base our lives and the lives of others on what we do. Simon was a fisherman. I'm a pastor. Tony is a business owner. Ruth is a food service worker. The temptation to let what we do define us is way too great. And the greater temptation is to let us define ourselves that way, not just other people, which becomes a problem when we can no longer do what we do anymore and we don't know how to live with ourselves. This reduction of ourselves into just one dimension of what we do for a living does us a disservice, I think, and Jesus knows it. I think that's why he gave Simon all of those fish, so that Simon would see the sum of his life's work in one pile and realize that there's something much more. I imagine that for us today it might look like Jesus coming and clearing out our email inboxes, or Jesus writing a lifetime's worth of sermons, or completing all the craft projects we're working on, or whatever it is that you do, that you throw yourself into working until you're blue in the face. We'd be confronted with our life-defining work complete. And then what? Simon looked at his fishy accomplishments in life and found a miracle. He found a miracle in the realization that fishing did not define who he was, or at least it didn't have to. He found a miracle in the faith to step out of the boat and follow Jesus, who would not see him as a fisherman, but would see him as a whole person with flaws and all, and still call him friend. And that's the miracle that I think we all need. And that miracle, thankfully, is not out of reach for any of us. It's one that I think we can all experience. Over the past few years, I've tried to lead by example with this miracle, and I've tried really hard to stop saying, "What do you do?" when I first meet someone, and instead ask them a question like, "How do you spend your days?" or "What brings you the most joy in life?" Something that helps me to get to know a person as a person rather than as their job. And by changing the question, by not assuming that their work or lack of work defines them, I experience the miraculous. I get to learn who they are and see them as a child of God, not just as a human robot answering emails all day long. This miracle is one we can experience right now. Turn to the person next to you, or behind you, or in front of you. And you may know what they do already, and you may not, but that doesn't matter. Share with each other what brings you the most joy in your life. And if you're joining online, you can leave a comment in the video. Go ahead. It's not going to hurt you, I promise. I'll ring the bell to wrap the conversation up. friends, in those moments that we just had with one another, did you feel the miracle? Did you feel like you could let go of just one part of yourself and show something bigger? Did you feel like you were valued for more than just how many quilts you produced, or how many policies you sold, or how many students you talked to this week? I hope you did. And I hope you saw that there is more to life than just a net full of fish. Because there is. And that miracle of learning to love yourself and define yourself by more than just one or two things is a part of following Jesus. In the community of Jesus, individual metrics don't matter because we're all in this together with our whole selves. That is the miracle that makes disciples. When faced with the choice to have only one part of yourself matter, or to have your whole self matter, and we choose to let our whole selves matter in a community, that miracle of choosing wholeness over compartmentalizing puts us in the same boat as Simon. Well, really, it takes us out of the same boat as Simon. And it gives us the freedom to walk with Jesus and to share the goodness of how our lives have been changed by God. And in sharing that journey with Jesus and with each other, that is the first step in becoming a fisher of people. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.